Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier Podcast. It's your boy Mac, and today I just want to take a bit of time and talk about my ideal Cleveland Cavaliers rotation, something that new head coach Kenny Atkinson is going to have to figure out in the next couple of days. It's something that I'm sure it's on most of our minds. There are a massive amount of players that are deserving of minutes. People want to shit on this rotation, this roster, like there is no depth at all. That's frankly bullshit in my opinion. This is one of the deeper teams in basketball. I do not mince words when I say that. Argue with the wall. This is one of the most densely populated rotations in the NBA. Now, there is a caveat with that. I understand that the Cavaliers clearly have some flaws. There are certain things, certain position groups that are lacking in specific areas, right? Like, i.e., the backup center. We know that we cannot truly rely upon Tristan Thompson, of all players, to be a valuable contributor come the postseason. That is no disrespect to the NBA champion that is Tristan Thompson. But Tristan Thompson should not be a part of the postseason rotation, and I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that he would not be included in that. Hell, I don't even know how deep Kenny plans on going into his rotation, but there are a lot of options to choose from. The obvious, the starting five, they're going to be out there no matter what, right? There is no way you're not starting Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Max Strus, and Jarrett Allen. You're going to start your five starters that you did last season. That is going to be the case. There is no controversy at the three. Jaylen Tyson, Caris LeVert, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro. None of these guys are going to start over Max Strus. Can't you make a case for a few of them? Possibly. Yes, probably Dean Wade is the most likely candidate for that you could argue the Cavaliers would be better positioned from a seasonal standpoint, positional standpoint, size, whatever, what have you. That lineup makes sense. We saw that. We've seen Dean Wade play a big role in the starting lineup, even harkening back to just last season. It has been the case for him that he has been very impactful when he started into that starting lineup. But there is no controversy here, folks. Max Strus is the starter at the three, barring injury, right? So that's your starting five. Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, Allen. Nothing special, no changes there, nothing different. Where things get a little bit interesting is on the bench. We can presume, and I'll use that word very loosely because I don't know the future, obviously, but we can presume that Caris LeVert is going to be the sixth man, at least to begin this season. Now, I've not been very shy about how I feel about his future prospects in Cleveland past this season. Hell, past the fucking trade deadline. I've not minced words at all about that. I do believe that this is likely to be Caris LeVert's last season in Cleveland. I'm sorry if I offended anybody out there by saying that or if I've hurt anybody's feelings. And that is no slight to Caris LeVert, but I do believe that moving LeVert opens the door for a couple of players in particular, whether you're talking about Jaylen Tyson, whether you're talking about Isaac Okoro, whether you're talking about Luke Travers, Dean Wade. There's a number of players that his departure would benefit. That said, that is clearly not going to be the case entering the season. Caris LeVert is your sixth man. He does so many of these different things that the Cavaliers depend on off the bench, whether that be scoring, whether that be playmaking. He's a decent rebounder at his position. When he is engaged and bought in, he can be a terrific defender. None of these things the Cavaliers can get in the whole package out of anybody else on that bench. Sans maybe Tyson, but we haven't seen that because he hasn't frankly played against NBA caliber competition, but more than 2 games now, and the results have been up and down. Definitely look like a great rebounder, but he is not bringing to the table what Caris LeVert brings to the table just yet. Past Caris LeVert, you have a trio of players that I believe are probably penciled in at 100% to be a big part of the rotation. That is Isaac Okoro, who the Cavaliers just re-signed this offseason. I don't know what his future outlook is in Cleveland, but what I do know is that he is here. The coaches have loved what they've seen from him this offseason, and frankly, you don't have a better perimeter defender on the roster outside of maybe Evan Mobley if you want to throw him out there because of his switchability. And Dean Wade, he's up there too. But Isaac Okoro is by far your best point of attack defender out there. So he is going to play a big role in the rotation to begin the season. You have Dean Wade, a player that I just referenced multiple times. When he has been in the rotation, he has made an impact, especially on the defensive end. And we know that he is one of the only front court players on this roster that can reliably space the floor. That is a big selling point for Dean, that 3-and-D mentality that he can bring to the table. That play style. We know with Dean, we've heard it a lot this offseason. Confidence, confidence, confidence. Confidence is the key for Dean Wade. The coaching staff, the organization, they believe in Dean Wade. The question is, does Dean Wade believe in Dean Wade? Because if Dean Wade believes in Dean Wade and he puts up the shots, he's not so passive out there, he looks to generate offense for himself, you just don't know what he can do, what his ceiling is. We like to think that, we can put his ceiling on Dean Wade, but truth be told, a confident Dean Wade is a very, very impactful player. So I'm very, very curious to see, knowing that the organization believes in him, what he will turn that into this year. Obviously, the biggest caveat with Dean Wade is health, though. Dean has got to stay healthy, something that he has failed to do on, at least 2 to 3 seasons now. He has never truly been ready and available when the Cavs need him most. And when he is, he's just not confident. He's not impactful enough to truly be a true presence out there. And so that is what we have seen from him the past couple of seasons. But there you go. Caris LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade. That other player that I definitely believe is going to be a part of this Cavaliers bench is Ty Jerome. A player that I would, at this point, after last season, if you were to ask me after what we saw from Craig Porter Jr., if Ty Jerome would be a part of this rotation heading into his second season in Cleveland, I'd say fuck no. Craig Porter Jr. has earned the right to be a part of the rotation. But with Ty Jerome's size out there, with Ty Jerome's ability to knock down the three-point shot, I just think that's going to be enough to be a leg up on Craig Porter Jr., who has made progress. He had a nice step back the other day against the Pacers, but we haven't seen enough from him from a three-point standpoint, and enough volume, frankly, to suggest that that is going to be an area that we can rely upon him. And I think that, especially as he is sharing the floor with some of these other players that may not be able to reliably space the floor, you're going to have that type of player out there at that point guard position. And I think that is going to end up being Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome, in my opinion, is going to be the backup point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers, at least to begin the season. There is still the possibility that Ty Jerome is moved around the deadline. Same conversations that we have about Caris LeVert, same conversations that people love to have about a player like George Niang. They're going to have them about Ty Jerome, depending upon the package that you can put together to bring back somebody that the Cavaliers feel like addresses their needs, whether that be backup big, whether that be a bigger 3-4 out there. There are some flaws on this roster, like I mentioned, but doesn't mean you have to immediately go out and try and make a move before seeing what you actually have. And I think Ty Jerome is going to start off in the rotation. That, my friends, is 9 players. That would be a typical 9-man rotation across the NBA because not everybody chooses to play 10, 11 deep like Kenny Atkinson keeps alluding to. So the real question is, if Kenny Atkinson decides to go with a 10-man unit, who is that 10th man? And there's a lot of speculation about who that could possibly be. Is it Sam Merrill, sharpshooter, sniper out there, the marksman, whatever you want to call him, the Mormon assassin? I don't know what you want to call Sam Merrill. I've heard a lot of different names thrown out there about him, but he is definitely somebody who deserves minutes. The problem with Sam Merrill is that he plays at a position where he is undersized technically, and there are a lot of mouths to feed. I don't necessarily want to call him undersized because I would think that they're going to play him mostly at the 2 guard. But again, that's the second part to that still applies. There are a lot of mouths to feed in that backcourt. Whether you're talking about Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Caris LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Ty Jerome, Jaylen Tyson, there are numerous players that could vie for minutes in that backcourt. And it's not, and Craig Porter Jr., right? It's not going to get any easier from here on out. And so do you want to play another smallish guard out there, or do you want to elect to bring some size to the equation? Is it going to be a Tristan Thompson because he is the only true backup big on the active roster? I do understand that JT Thor could probably qualify as such due to his versatility from a positional standpoint, being able to play some 3, some 4, and some 5. But he is on a 2-way deal. That has to be mentioned. And Tristan Thompson is the only true big on the roster. So that being the case, if you're looking at adding size, if you're going matchup dependent, I guess that's another aspect to it. But Tristan makes a lot of sense here too. And then you have players such as George Niang, who is coming off a somewhat of a disappointing season. A lot of people categorize it that way. I feel indifferent sometimes about George Niang's first season in Cleveland. And I say that because we knew what we were getting when we signed him, right? It was the element of floor spacing at volume. And to be honest, he sort of did that last year in a sense. I get he could be very streaky, and we definitely saw that from a number of players on this roster last year. And he didn't shoot it at his usual 40% clip, but I'd say almost nearly 38% from the front court on reasonable volume. He definitely accomplished that aspect. But what was missing from what he provided was the defense and the rebounding component. And in the front court, that's kind of huge. He did have a career high in rebounds, but it still paled in comparison to some of the other players that are on the roster and given the minutes that he was given. He should not have been out-rebounded by players like Caris LeVert and Donovan Mitchell and Max Strus. That just should not happen. You're out there in the front court. You're playing a sizable role, and I get that you're out beyond the three-point line most of the time, but you got to do better than that. And then defensively, he's just not quick enough. He's just not big enough to keep up with some of the players that he has matched up against, depending upon the certain matchup. But George Niang is another name that deserves to be mentioned here for that 9th or 10th spot. And then you look at the rook in Jaylen Tyson, a player that we all want to see out on that court immediately, but at the position that he plays, is he going to be able to stave off some of the veterans that are here and that are also deserving of minutes? Is he going to be able to perform or outperform them, should I say, to a degree that Kenny Atkinson would feel comfortable rolling with the rookie early on? That's the biggest question. If I'm rolling the dice right now, then I'm just going to be honest with you. If I'm rolling the dice right now, I think I might lean Jaylen Tyson's way. But the problem, again, is minutes distribution and how you're going to get minutes for him in a back or front court, depending upon where you play him at, because I'm assuming that they play him at the 2-3. If you're looking specifically at those positions, what lineups are you going to use? Because Caris is already going to be needing minutes, presumably a large role. Max Strus ain't going nowhere. You have Isaac Okoro, who's also not going anywhere. Dean Wade factors in there too, depending upon where they're going to play him, though I think they'll play him mostly at the 4, maybe even some small ball 5. There are a lot of mouths to feed. And so that is another hurdle, another potential hurdle that is in Jaylen Tyson's way. But goddamn, like I want to see him out there. Like I feel that way with such conviction that it's going to be harder and harder for this team to sit Jaylen Tyson as the games go by, no matter how some of these other guys are performing. But again, I do believe that a consolidation trade will be made around the deadline to free up some minutes, to free up a role for Jaylen. And we may just have to sit tight and be content in that. But damn, it's very, very hard when you see a player out here that does all these things that the Cavaliers have struggled in certain areas off the bench, whether that be rebounding out of the wing, because Jaylen Tyson at his size, 6'5", 6'6", however you want to classify him, he's out there skying for rebounds, and that shit is beautiful. He is attacking the glass, not only on the defensive end, but he is attacking the offensive glass as well. He is going up for rebounds. He is battling front court players for those rebounds, and he just looks like he wants to be out there and get his hands dirty. And that is something that we haven't always seen out of our wings. Yeah, Max Strus is probably the closest thing we have, because I do believe that Max is a great rebounder for his size. But at the end of the day, Tyson, he combines all of these different things. He is a solid playmaker, having manned the lead guard position basically at Cal. We know that he can move off ball pretty well. We've seen him do that through a few games in preseason now, where that be cutting to the basket along the baseline, or that be some off-screen action, getting catch and shoot opportunities. We've seen that already. And while we cannot count on him to be a consistent volume shooter, because he was never truly that at any of his stops in college, and we just haven't seen it at the NBA level yet, while he is not that yet, I do believe that he can develop into that the more comfortable that he gets. So it's just tough. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I do believe that we have seen him really, really go out there and try hard. And that is so much of what we need right now. We need that effort. And Kenny Atkinson, he has mentioned numerous times that he's not going to try and change up a formula that's already working from the defensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, you do have to try and get these guys to continuously buy in to the defensive aspect of basketball. It's not all offense. And Kenny, for better or worse, he is an offensive mind. So I'm very curious to see if we can sustain the high level defense that we have. And a lot of that is the players themselves, right? We have a terrific backline of defense in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. That's great and all, but can the other guys that may not be best positioned to suit up in some of these matchups, can they continuously buy in? I think they can, but having seen Jaylen Tyson out there can just be productive on that side of the ball. It's a refreshing sight. So this dude, very young, very composed, sounds like a vet at times. He adds all of these things in this one package, and it makes me want to play him. And it's just tough because we may not get the opportunities right off the bat to do so. But at the end of the day, it is good to know that you have that in the pipeline. And then some of these other players that I mentioned, right? Like Craig Porter Jr., Tristan Thompson, JT Thor may even get an opportunity later on down the line, assuming that he is probably the first player converted this season. There are a number of players that deserve opportunities that may not get them. And this is all going to boil down to what Kenny values most. Is it going to be matchup driven? Are we going to see certain players play specific games and other players not, and then interchange throughout the matchups? I spoke about Tristan Thompson and having that lone backup five that can actually spell Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, at least during the regular season. Will that factor in at certain times? Let's say the Cavaliers are playing a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, and you need a bigger body out there that can, contest and actually put some weight on the Joel Embiids and the Andre Drummonds of the world. Are you going to go with a more small ball aspect to try and run teams off the floor? Are you going to bring Jaylen Tyson out there playing? Are you going to put CPJ out there? Are you going to give JT a chance? These are all questions that we got to get answers to, and we're going to have to let the regular season play out, at least to some degree, that before we can actually have solidified answers to them, which it sucks. But, part of this is the journey, and that's what makes it so fun. If I was a betting man right now, if I had to lay out my 10-man rotation for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it is Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Jarrett Allen, Caris LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Ty Jerome, Dean Wade, and Jaylen Tyson. That's it. That's my 10. That is my 10. And I'm exploding here with so much. It's just it's a lot to digest, man, because you know that a lot of these guys deserve minutes, and I'm like throwing Jaylen Tyson here in that 10th spot, and that's coming at the that's coming at the cost of a Tristan Thompson in the lineup, of the true backup five. That's coming at the cost of George Niang, your only true volume shooter out of the front court. It's tough, and this is why I think, thank the Lord sometimes that I don't have to make these decisions, because I don't know what I would do. Because it's not just picking names. You're managing egos too. You might have to have a conversation with some of these guys who have been around the league for a few years now and say, hey, you know what? we may not need you right now, but stay ready. We might need you in the future. When I think about that type of conversation, the first couple of names that come to mind for me are Tristan Thompson and George Niang. And it's tough. And that's this is one of the toughest conversations I'm sure that head coaches have to have, is figuring out the every game or every day rotation, whatever, what have you. And so that's just the thing right here. This is the initial rotation. If I had to choose, it is those 10 players, and that could very well change, throughout the duration of the season, depending upon how certain guys play in specific lineups. But that is where I am at right now. And I fully understand that I could be wrong as hell. This could be the dumbest lineup out there that you guys can think of, but I don't care. It just shows you how much faith that I have in specific players on that bench. I am still a huge believer in Isaac Okoro. I do believe that Kersever has a place here, at least for now. Dean Wade, I think, is one of the most underrated players on the roster. Ty Jerome, I still believe, is going to play a big role after only seeing him in 2 fucking games last year. And then Jaylen Tyson. I believe in this young rook enough to include him in my 10-man rotation. That's where I'll leave it at. Go Cavs.